Welcome back again. Yeah, I'm doing a video about Don Lemon going irate on his show. All because he passed out when he got arrested at the Grammys. He said he felt embarrassed or targeted. Now you know how you felt with people in the church when you got the cameras in their face. Now you know how they felt. Embarrassed. Had the right stomped on. Personal space invaded. Now you know how it fucking felt, you sorry bastards. So let's get into this video about him being embarrassed and harassed.
It is to metaphorically punch them right in the nose. And you need to introduce not only Donald Trump and the folks who work for him and his administration, but the corporate overlords and the gatekeepers. You need to introduce them to the word no.
Like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get notifications anytime I go live or make a video. I love you guys. God bless America. Let's get into this.
It's time for Friday Punditry. And my guest this week, I'm so excited about this conversation. My buddy, former college football player, former police officer, and now, I think, one of the most interesting and best content creators in the conservative movement. He is the host of the Officer Tatum Show. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Brandon Tatum, here on the Scott Jennings Show. Brandon, my man, good to see you, sir.
Well, Scott Jennings, I feel kind of weird because I'm over here blushing of another man speaking well of me. So I do appreciate it, Scott. I'm not going to lie. Coming from you means more than just about anybody in the world. And I really appreciate all the kind words. And I'm honored to be a part of your show.
Well, I appreciate you, my friend. And the friendship we've struck up has been very special to me. And it's been nice to visit you a couple of times at your headquarters out there in Arizona. And your take, I think, on what's going on in the world is so refreshing. It's a very real world, a very common sense approach, and there's no wonder why people are attracted to it. The way you do it, the way you present yourself, it's very well done. And your voice, I think, has just become so important on the American right. And I want to get your thoughts on some things going on in the news. Brandon, I know you have thoughts on this, so I'm just going to tee it up. Don Lemon, former CNN anchor, has been arrested by the feds for busting into a church a couple of Sundays ago, violating people's civil rights there, violating the Federal FACE Act. When you heard Don Lemon had gotten arrested when you woke up this morning, what did you think?
Well, first of all, this is probably the most exciting morning I've ever had in my life, watching this weirdo get arrested for things he should have been arrested for, and his arrogance is what got him, in my personal opinion. So I'm glad to see him go to jail.
I've heard that my former colleagues at CNN all came out pretty unanimously, pretty strongly to support me. I understand, I believe that CNN released a statement. I've heard that CNN released a statement. Thank you very much. I have no animus for CNN. I have no animus for anyone, but I tell the truth as about what I see. And I think it's time for all journalists to stand up for each other. So I appreciate that. And at CNN, I worked with the best journalists in the world. So I wish them nothing but the best. But I believe those journalists as well need to stand up to the corporation. They need to tell Warner Brothers Discovery, stop playing and get your hands out of the newsroom. CBS needs to tell Paramount and David Ellison and whatever, get out of our newsroom. Get out of our journalism. Barry Weiss, take your hands off of it. Let the journalists be the journalists. All of them. That goes for every single corporate entity that owns a journalistic organization. Let the journalists be the journalists, because they're going to save our democracy if you just let them do it. The way to stand up to a bully, to a tyrant, is not to bend the knee. It's not to acquiesce. It is to metaphorically punch them right in the nose. And you need to introduce not only Donald Trump and the folks who work for him and his administration, but the corporate overlords and the gatekeepers. You need to introduce them to the word no. All the journalists, they cannot fire you. We were always taught when I worked in corporate media that the news is a star. That's bullshit. If the news was a star, everybody would have the same ratings. And everybody doesn't have the same ratings. The journalists are the stars. The people who are delivering the news, those are the stars. And the people who do well, they get the ratings and they get the respect. So it is, and actually having come from that, now I understand that what my star quality is, that is being honest and authentic and telling the truth. And I think that's if everyone did that and they were not afraid of the powers that be, that's our motto. That's our mission. Just like a doctor, just like a lawyer, what we're supposed to do is hold the powerful to account and do no harm. And if you don't want to do harm to the American people, then stand up for democracy. Stand up for the First Amendment. So thank you so much. CNN journalists, I love you. Dana Bash, thank you. Jake, thank you. Aaron Burnett, thank you to all of the people over at CNN who I like. And thank you to the management and who I worked with forever for putting out a statement. And thank you to the folks on MSNBC. Thank you to Scott Galloway and to everyone.
I'm glad to see him go to jail. I'm glad to see, or at least get arrested. I don't know what they're going to do as far as charging, but this guy is a flat out idiot. And his arrogance is what caused him to go to jail. Because if he was a real journalist, he would have stood outside and interviewed people outside as they leave the church. Instead, he premeditated on camera by joining the protest with foreknowledge that they were going to go and disrupt a church. And he goes in with them and challenges the pastor. He didn't ask him a question. He challenged him and critiqued him and chastised him. That's not journalism. And then when he's asked to leave, at least if you're a journalist, you would study law. If you go into a building, it doesn't matter if you're a journalist or not. If it's a private facility and they ask you to leave, which is a reasonable request to leave, you have to, or you are committing a crime. If you are part of disorderly conduct and you are, knowingly and intentionally being a part of that, that is a crime. But he goes even further because these people intentionally attacked a church and he knew about it. And this is the reason why he got charged with some of the charges that he did. Conspiracy to deprive rights and also the violation of the FACE Act. And I'm glad that they're taking this stuff seriously because it's not right to do this at any religious facility. I don't care if it was a mosque. You don't do this at someone's place of worship. It's not right.
One good rule of being a criminal, don't film your crimes and then put them out on the internet is one possible rule.
You guys have literally sold past half of our inventory in pre-order in 1 week. 1 week, Verdict is sold past half of all of our inventory. Like, we got to restock. You guys are getting ready to sell us out. And if you want to get Verdict shipped to you during the pre-order period, which I think is going to be at the end of this week, it's going to start shipping out. If you want the Verdict, you better get on there and get some today because we're going to sell out.
So make sure if you're interested, go on. You must be 21 and over, obviously, but you make sure you drink responsibly. We don't do the irresponsible drinking. We don't do the drinking to get drunk and intoxicated. Pre-order today.
You were a police officer in Tucson, Arizona before you got into your current job and profession as being a commentator on the right. And right now in the news, Brandon, we have a bunch of people in this country who are inciting violence and worse against federal and I think also local law enforcement. When you watch what's going on in Minneapolis, when you hear these Democratic officials calling cops, Gestapo, calling them the Nazis or worse, when you see these radical agitators in the street, as someone who wore the uniform, how does all this strike you?
Well, it's incredibly frustrating and it's perplexing. I cannot understand for the life of me how grown adults are sitting here advocating for violence or even watching it unfold and not challenging it when they didn't do nothing. When ICE and Border Patrol was doing the same type of a thing under another administration. I cannot believe grown people are crying on television, Scott. Crying as if they're just so perplexed that our government is actually following the laws in which we voted for. It's mind-blowing. I don't know if they're evil or stupid or both. It's perplexing to me. And it is frustrating because they act as if the men and women who wear the uniform on the Border Patrol or ICE or even local law enforcement are not also Americans, are not also patriots, do not also believe in the First Amendment, and is sworn to protect and serve with their lives and uphold the Constitution. I don't know where they're getting their reason from, but it's a shame that they're doing law enforcement and men and women who are serving with their lives this way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I want to ask, when you were an officer in Tucson, what kind of interactions did you have with ICE? And also, what kind of enforcement interactions did you have with illegal immigrants? Because I assume they're in Tucson. It was fairly common being close to the border. Give us a little perspective as a former officer about what these law enforcement personnel are going through as they're simply trying to enforce existing federal immigration law.
Well, Scott, when I was a cop, it was very different. Like Chief Villasenor, who was the chief of the Tucson Police Department at the time, we worked together with Border Patrol and ICE to get criminals off the streets. It was very simple. They had the SB 1070 checks. And that means that if we encountered a person who admitted that they were illegally in this country, or they spoke Spanish or could not speak any English and had no documentation, we had the ability to contact Border Patrol or ICE, and they'll run a check and see if that person is someone that they want to talk to. That's it. And if the person were to get arrested for a municipal crime or a crime that was prosecuted by the state, not the federal government, we will take them to the jail and put an ICE hold on them, which means they will remain there until their identity could be verified, so that we made sure this is not a fugitive or somebody wanted for murder somewhere. We had a easy-going relationship. We are also law enforcement officers, even at the municipal level. We don't stop enforcing the law because somebody's an illegal alien. We work together with Border Patrol, and it bothers me that, well, I'll put it this way: ICE and Border Patrol are deployed all over the country.
Right.
We have no issues in 99% of the situations. So other jurisdictions are working with them in a very reasonable and practical way. It's just Minnesota and these sanctuary cities that do not want enforcement of federal law to go on at all. They want illegal aliens to be able to do whatever they want to do, use as much taxpayer dollar, and ultimately be a future voter that they wish that they can lock in with amnesty. And so it's not even about the enforcement perspective, but we work with Border Patrol all the time, being a border state, and it was a great working relationship. And I'll add this one thing, Scott, is that we knew, and Chief Villasenor knew, that it's better that we get the people off the streets when we first make contact with them or when they get to the jail, so that ICE doesn't have to come into the community and interfere with the day-to-day work that we're trying to do as municipal law enforcement officers.
Well, what you just said is the critical issue. You can either have cooperation in the jail or you got to go get them in the community. And that's the real problem in Minneapolis. There's no cooperation, so you got to chase them down on the streets, which requires a lot more manpower. I want to play for you a clip of the mayor of Minneapolis. His name is Jacob Frey. He's an honorary Somali pirate. Let's play cut 2 about the fact he won't cooperate. Here's Frey.
Define your definition, Mr. Mayor, of what a sanctuary city is and how you feel about sanctuary cities existing in this nation.
Well, there's this terminology around sanctuary city. Put that aside for a second. I'll tell you what we've got in Minneapolis. What we have is something called a separation ordinance. And what the separation ordinance says is that we do not enforce federal immigration law. We do not have our police officers, our public officials working with any federal agency on federal enforcement of immigration law.
Brandon, it sounds to me like the mayor of Minneapolis is perfectly fine if violent, criminal, illegal aliens, some of the worst of the worst, drug traffickers, murderers, rapists, pedophiles, gangbangers, are roaming the streets of Minneapolis. It sounds crazy to me.
Scott, that's exactly what he's saying. He's also conflating and trying to gaslight the public. No local or state law enforcement officer has the jurisdiction to enforce federal law. That's not even on the books. He says
Right.
We're not going to cooperate. There is no necessity to cooperate with federal agents in their enforcement. But when you encounter a person who committed a felony crime and they're illegally in this country, they're not asking you to prosecute them on a federal level. All they're doing is saying, hey, can you notify us that you've captured a guy who's an MS-13 gang member that's an illegal alien in this country? Or when you take him to the jail, can you at least notify us that he's in the jail so we can come get him? He's lying. They're conflating. We never enforce federal law. That's not our jurisdiction or our expectation. But that does not mean that we cannot work with them. The crazy thing is, you see a murderer running down the street, and you go, well, he murdered somebody in another jurisdiction, which means across state lines. That makes it a federal crime, and the U.S. Marshals typically will go and get that person. But if I'm a cop and I see the guy, am I going to say, well, that's the U.S. Marshal's job because he committed a crime in another state, which I don't have jurisdiction over? No law enforcement officer would do that. Even as a man, if I was on my porch and I saw a man who abused a child come running down the street, and I go, well, I'm not a cop, so I'm not going to get involved. That's how silly he sounds. These people are not mom and pop working at the swap meet or something, and they're going and finding them. These are hardened criminals who have committed crimes against people in the United States of America, which is why we know they exist. If you are illegal alien in this country and you're not doing anything criminal, and we won't even really know you exist, you're kind of flying under the radar. It's the people that go out and they commit felony crimes, or they commit felony crimes in other countries, and the people of that original country want them back for prosecution. That's how ICE gets the information, brings it before a judge, they sign an arrest warrant, and they go and execute a lawful arrest warrant. This is what we see ICE trying to do. But these weirdos that literally want lawlessness in their city is saying, we won't help you at all, and we want crime to be rampant.
Brandon, one of the things I admire about what you're doing is not just the content that you're creating, but you have a whole ethos of entrepreneurship in your building there. When I visited you guys have got, I know people see the podcast and they see the content you're creating, but there's all kinds of stuff going on in the Brandon Tatum world. You've got energy drink that you're promoting. You started a company called Blackline Security Operations. Tell me a little bit about the business side of Brandon Tatum and what you have going on out there in Scottsdale.
Well, thank you, Scott, for asking that question. I mean, I consider myself to be a serial entrepreneur. You know, when God created man, he created us in his image and likeness. And I believe that us being creators and visionaries and stuff is all a part of God's creation for us. And so when I look at business, I look at business the same way. Whatever I can imagine that I think could benefit people and change the world, I want to get involved and do it. And so we do tons of different things here. Like, we literally got an energy drink, a sleep drink. All of our staff uses it. We have a bourbon company that we just started called Verdict Bourbon. I have a security company. We have a nonprofit that's associated with the security company. I have a print shop and a distribution center. And all of those things are what I would consider to be passion projects for me, that gives me the ability to control, I could say, fair, affordable products and services for conservatives and people who are reasonable. And I'm just blessed to be able to do it. And so I appreciate you, throwing it out there, because I do more than just talk. I do a lot of business leadership, and I own a couple companies as well.
Yeah, when I met with you out in your headquarters, I was so impressed and amazed by you, but also by your team. You get all these folks working for you out there doing different aspects of your businesses. It was a really impressive operation. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit about that with us. Brandon, you are our Pundit of the Week, and it is tradition here on Friday Punditry that we ask our Pundit of the Week to tell us who won the week in America. American politics or American culture in general. So, Brandon Tatum, who won this week?
Well, it took a while for me to think of this person. I think this person is probably one of the greatest people that I've seen in the last, several years, and that is the one and only Scott Jennings. You are the winner. I'm telling you about. I looked and I'm unbiased. I looked and I said, who won the week? And I see you every single day on there doing the Lord's work. I do not know how you do it, Scott, listening to these lunatics. And I'm saying it, not you. They're great people to you. They're lunatics to me. I saw Ana Navarro. I think she was on the show when she said that Alex Pretty was somebody that you want to marry your daughter. And that he's a role model for everybody. I could not believe it. I could not believe that people get on there and say that. But I'm telling you, Scott, if you weren't there not only giving the truth and the voice of reason, but you do it with decorum, professionalism, and with humility, our country would be dead. They with no impunity. They literally get on there and say the wildest and craziest and nonsensical things that I've ever heard in my life, and it's always come back to you where you go, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, here is the reality and common sense. So, without buttering your toast too much, I think Scott Jennings, you are the winner of the week.
All right. Well, you're officially invited back for every Friday for Friday Punishment, Brandon. I appreciate that. So you pick the winner. It's my job to pick the loser. I considered Don Lemon. I considered Tim Walz. I considered Cuba. I considered the Hall of Fame voters who snubbed Bill Belichick. But I think I'm going to go with Stephen Colbert. Let's play Stephen Colbert, who said on his show this week, well, you got to hand it to the Nazis. Here's Stephen Colbert.
Bavino went on complaining. Look, Dana, they're trying to portray Border Patrol agents and ICE agents as Gestapo, Nazi, and many other words. Yes, do not compare ICE or Border Patrol agents to the Nazis. That's an unfair comparison. The Nazis were willing to show their faces.
Stephen Colbert, ultimately the least funny and most useless comedian in America, even more useless than Jimmy Kimmel, Brandon, but he is my absolute loser of the week. Brandon Tatum, you've been great. Thanks for coming by. I will see you in Arizona, I think, in a few weeks. I can't wait to see you again. I know you got a new ride. We're going to take a ride together. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll have a great conversation. That was Brandon Tatum. I'm Scott Jennings. The week is over.
It's time for Lefties Losing It. Let's start in Minnesota, where the spin doctors have been busy fighting back after revelations of mass fraud and dysfunction in the Somali community, and they're putting their best and brightest to work in front of the media to explain what it means to be Somali in America.
So I'm Somali. I'm proud to be Somali. To me, being Somali isn't just eating bananas with rice. It's a lot. It's like it's an interesting thing. It's very hard to describe what it means to be Somali and what it means to be American.
Okay, hon, I know it's hard, but you can do this. You've already made it clear that being Somali is not about eating bananas with rice. That's a lie. You got this.
And it's kind of like the bananas and rice. You know, people don't really see, like, you know, it's you know, people don't think, oh, you can eat bananas with rice, but that's what it's like to be Somali and American. It's like